talk briefly through the first page, which is it's just rhetoric.byu.edu. So this is a free site that was created very heavily focused on ancient rhetorical theory, and for a huge portion of this class, this is going to be a really useful site because it will have terminology and it'll have words that you can come back to. So when you go through the textbook and something, bubbles up and you're like, I don't quite understand this. So the big one that I always look up is Aristotle's enthymemes. You're not going to be quizzed on that because even I struggle with what Aristotle meant by an enthymeme. What this will do for the concepts that you do need to look up is give you backup support for this book. It is not a replacement for this book at all. It's not that robust, but it'll give you a little bit of, or potentially a lot of help and support with specific terminology and with specific ideas so that you can see why we're tracing it in the way we do. The other thing, and I really like this intro page, and there are only a couple notes that you need to take on it because it's getting at what is the function of rhetorical theory. So I said this in module 0, so you probably have read all of this already. And then you're gonna see it again in this book. Humans developed ways of communicating because we really like to communicate. Like, we are in so many ways biologically programmed, like with our voice boxes and with the way that our brains developed and with the way that we respond to touch and the way we form community. We are biologically programmed. Memes are a great example. I have an 11-year-old who loves to tell me about the latest memes because he's 11. But there are a lot of ways that that idea and the way that we transmit culture mimetically has existed for a long time, way before the internet, way before the internet. The idea of memes and little pockets of culture being passed on to other people and being spread and being shared and then being, to a huge extent, genetically coded has existed within our DNA. Like, we as a human population, this is not just Western culture, all humans like to communicate. So when we start looking at why do we communicate in the ways we do and how do we communicate and then how do we self-govern and how do we form society, how do we set rules, and some of that is definitely based on religious beliefs and cultural beliefs, but a lot of that also really comes down to the ways that we form sentences to communicate specific ideas, and then the way that teaching and learning surround all of that so that we can communicate it more broadly, so that we get a large group of people to buy into our ideas, so that we then form a community. We form community standards. We have culture that comes up with it. And so we end up with really important ways, once we've taken care of basic needs, food, shelter, water, we have time on our hands, and we have time on our hands to really think about how do we think and how is our thinking shaped by the things around us. And you'll see all the way through the Enlightenment, like, thinking existed in a vacuum. We don't think in a vacuum. We think through culture always. We think rhetorically. Nicole's view of the world here, but we definitely think through what it is we know. We think about, here I am as a professor and I'm going to think with my professor hat on, or here I am as a student in a class, I'm going to think with my student hat on, or here I am as a mom, I'm going to think with my mom hat on. But in each of those cases, I'm thinking with purpose. And I have very specific things that are coming up and very specific things that I'm ignoring because they don't matter in that situation. The idea of grading and what grading means has very little to do with who I am as a mother. Very little. Mostly just timing. Like, how do I work out my timing so I get enough time with my kid? But that's it. I can turn stuff off and I can turn stuff on. And that's what this first page is getting at when we start talking about what are the small scale concerns of rhetoric and the large scale concerns of rhetoric. We're really starting to get into those ideas. How does our ability to communicate and the ways that we communicate filter through those large scale and small scale concerns? That's what you're looking for on this first page, and that is a, really long intro to rhetoric. I get very excited talking about rhetoric, so bear with me this semester. It's going to be so much fun. If you have any questions, send me an email or come to office hours. I'll see you online.